Friends, please attention. By the way, I can see. Maybe I don't see well, but so there are some people from business. They come when they want to come, and they go when they want to go, and they kind of tend to miss intellectual components of our deliberations. Yes, but they come only for some things that they think are more useful for them. And I would like to introduce you to a person who I think, as many professionals know and very well aware, want to introduce you to someone who is not the only one, but one of the best economists in our country. There are very few excellent economists, because like in any profession, like in any business, many know a lot but understand very little. And here we had a teacher talking to you. You remember Sergei Vladimirovich, and his close friend and colleague, Mr. Yasin. And you remember I was telling you about the school, and so this school so starts with one of his wonderful disciples, students, Mr. Yasin's students, and I think that this Sergei Vladimirovich was, I think it was a wonderful article in the paper where he described what economy is. So when he considers economy from the prism through the prism of political and social components and the social institutions that are necessary for the operation of economy. And now just he is living between the two continents, which is the US and Russia. And so I'm very grateful that at this short period of time, short stretch of time that he found himself in Russia, he found time to come and make this presentation. And I would like, on behalf of this class, so to give him a huge thanks. Huge thanks, and I think that you will be able to ask passionate questions, because the presentation will be passionate as well. So these are the applause that after which I need to leave, right? And okay, questions. Okay, I love questions. Okay, then the people have many ideas that they want to ask about, and so then let's just ask. So I don't get so five questions in a row, and then I start answering. Okay. 5 questions. Thank you for a chance to ask Sochi, David. So I always just love your presentation. You are my favorite speaker after Shenderovich, and so I always listen to you when you are on air. So you live between two countries, Russia and the United States, and in the regions among the civil activists, among people who are passionate, so there's a big deal of apathy. And so then there was a great deal of social wave of activity in 2011. So people who believed, trusted in anything that who thought that that could be changed in Russia, something. And so now they realize that it's getting worse and worse, and we see dynamics, the curves there, what laws are made, and how elections are held. And in this connection, against this background, what kind of words we need to find, what kind of motivation we need to find to stop people from leaving, so that they could stay in Russia, so that they wouldn't go abroad or into the internal domestic immigration. Closing, okay. Timofey Grigoriuk, Yaroslav. I wanted to ask why the economy won't grow. Why our economy? Because for me, it's a very interesting subject matter, and so I think so. What is this? Why is that it's not growing? Because we listened to Mr. Yasin concerning we got his take about the prospects of the Russians. So he was optimistic, but very moderately optimistic. But about only a year ago, so we had this seminar in Yaroslavl of civil leaders, so some economists spoke, and Mr. Yasin spoke there as well. And there the forecasts were quite grave. So everyone, the listeners, so they thought that so encroaching, impending catastrophe and crisis, and so we're ready to tighten the belts. And what is it? What's in the way? What's in the way of our economy? So the last years, why the economy won't grow? And whether there will be eventually more or less a crisis. Is the crisis coming in the Russian economy or not? Khvostov, Saratov. I've been trying to ask this question to Voloshin, to Ryzhkov, and I decided to ask this question about Khodorkovsky. So he was released half a year ago, Mr. Khodorkovsky, yes, and over this half a year hasn't been to the States a single time. And I wanted to ask why. Has been to the States? Oh yes, he's been to the States. No problem, he's been there. Okay. So what was his conflict with the United States? Why? So Mr. Khodorkovsky, so he travels far and wide, and that's his own time, and he goes to the States, and so he's been there many times, I can tell you. But if he doesn't want to comment on his trips, why should I do that? So ask another question. Rudakov, Rostov-on-Don. So that's a kind of similar question. So the stagnation, the recession, so when will it end? Is it a temporary thing that will bottom out and fix itself, or it's a systemic crisis, so which will be impossible, difficult to overcome? Kovalyov, Sergei. Okay. Timur Ingushetia, Timur Uzhakov. I asked Mr. Kudrin this question, and we didn't get a coherent answer that I would like to hear. It has to do with imports replacement of imports. Our guest said that where a raw materials, commodities region is very difficult to replace imports. So although the Kazakhstan sales commodities, does it very well. And like some Arabic countries, they do that as well. So why being just a commodity region, still we can't start replacement of imports, so which can actually give good indicators of the rates of GDP growth. Kovalyov, Volgograd. Why the economy won't grow? No, so then the economy will grow, but if you fertilize it and if you water it. So it's agriculture. I want to ask about agriculture. So they just stop agriculture they prevent agriculture from developing, or we don't want, because I get the impression that there is a targeted program to kill Russian agriculture. Can you? So they're just preventing, or there is a special, program to kill Russian agriculture? Hidden agenda. Great questions, by the way. And everything is about immigration, emigration, I don't understand. So let's start with the economics first. So why the economy won't grow? So because it needs to be watered and fertilized. Because economy is such an organism, so for a person, food, water, sun. So we need just to feed the human body. Because if you don't eat, don't drink, so you can just lose some weight, you look fresh and nice. But when that's the third day, so you can feel that your stamina is going, and then in a week's time, so you start to die. And so something is wrong. So you want just to sit, and then you want to lie down if they don't feed you. And the same, so investments, so the same thing. Those who are involved in business, you fully realize that. So there's no such thing that you build a business and then you smoke and then your business works. That doesn't happen that way. You need to do something, add value, something to improve, invest. So change computers, offices, cars, whatever, suppliers. So this is all investments. And so you have to invest in your business, not only materials, so energy, your zest, your verve, so whatever, attitude. You need to do that. And so it's true of any company, it's true of the world economy, it's true of the country economy. And so the economy cannot develop if there are no investments, like cars. Any car, you need to maintain it, you need to change, pump, oil, etc., lubricate. But if you have a company, and for a long period of time, you're not going to invest, so then you won't be able just to get even, just to the same level that you had last year. So you will be biting the dust of other companies. And that's in the Russian economy. So starting from crisis 2008, and so in 1999 to 2008, so there was this correlation that 2% of investment growth, the economy gets 1% growth of GDP. 2% to 1. So 1% of GDP growth, 2% investment. So this is the correlation. And so the range is very close. 1 to 10. So it could be 195, so 2 to 1, 2 to 1. 2 to 1, and that's how it works. And but in 2013, the investments dried up in Russia. So the economy of Russia did not get any investments or growth of investments, and as a result, so this process started to slow down. So the investment started to decelerate, and in 2013, so the investment stopped. In 2014, the first Q. Minus 5% investments. This is it. And so this is a very simple answer, because this is a causal conditioning. And then, why the investments dried up? So why our country is such that no one wants to invest in us? And so why people don't want to do that? And because they are not sure that the investments will be paid back to those who invest. Because the economic relationship, not sure that if I invest, I will get anything from it. Because the relationship is built on trust. In a more modern world, so you can have connections, relations with customers, suppliers, and never meeting them. It's on the internet. So you met them, you talk to them virtually. So you paid, and you got a service, you got a product. That's it. And this is the contract is the basis of economy. Agreement is the basis of economy, relationship between the people, so on a handshake. And if one side breaks the contract, so you take this side to court. And so for many centuries they do that. And so then the court will decide who's right, who's wrong. So the court protects the contract, and the contract protects your property rights, supply, investments, whatever. In Russia, there's a situation when when the time of fast money, quick money ended, so you cannot invest today, in 3 months' time get a good response. So the investment contracts, so 3, 4, 5, 7 years, so 15 years, some people invest. And business in the wider sense of the world came up face to face with the fact there are no guarantees that the result of your investments you will get the result, because anytime so some guys can come to you and say, so will you please give me 25% of your business, or half of your business, or just sell me your business cheap, and get out of here. And this situation brought about that people realized that the situation that the court will not protect, and so there is no protection of property rights, and that's it. And business lost interest because modern business is quite mobile. So globalization that we hear all the time, it's not a bad word. It's an event that we're living through. So the phenomenon. We can live in Tambov and buy commodity in Australia, process it in China, and sell to South America, and have accounts in the Swiss bank. So this thing works. So you don't have to have it all just close at hand. So no one works like that. And that's why business always has a choice. So to invest in Russia, or invest in other country, or just to put the money on the back burner and this is to keep it. Yes, because if you invest and then you lose everything. But if you put on deposit, so then at least you haven't lost your money. So certainly you won't make as much as you wanted, but you won't lose it. So then the situation is such that the majority of businesses, considerable business community, they do not trust the future and safety of their investments. And simultaneously, so then there are another process that's superimposed. So in 2010, 2011, so the Russian government made a decision to increase defense spending. So then the budget now just goes for the defense and the special services, special agencies, Ministry of Interior. And the budget is not made of rubber. You cannot just extend it or just blow and pump it up like a balloon. So then the defense budget went up. In the regional budgets after the presidential elections of 2012, so there appeared some May orders of the president where the regions had asked to increase salaries to workers, to teachers. So then the first average in the region, that above the average region, no one gave any money for that. And so that was the decrees of the president, so for the regions, so to increase the salaries. And then you fully realize that the best way if you need to save money quickly, so you cut investments, right? That's it. Because you can do it quickly, so the scale is quite high, and there is no short-term effect. So, for example, if you in our company you stop a certain investment project, then for the next half a year nothing will happen to your company. Certainly it will start slowing down, but it will survive. The same in the economics. If in any area, so you stop investing, so buying fixed assets, equipment, teachers, school, computers, whatever. So the school or hospitals, if you don't buy MRT equipment, it will continue to work. But in a certain period of time, it will start to grind down to a complete stop. And the teachers so will be happy or unhappy. That's right. But they will work. And so this combination, these two processes, on the one hand, is distrust of business. So they're not protected, the property rights not protected, and the budget has been so reoriented to defense and increasing social spendings. And so this is why so the investment shrunk as a result. I was in some other region recently, and fall I spoke there. And I spoke to a local minister of economy, so he to my simple question, where you got the money to raise salaries, so he said, so we cut investments. That's it. How much? 25%. That's it. It means that in 4 years' time, so then that they raise salaries, so just to carry out the order of the president, if it continues to go like that, then in 4 years' time there will be no investments at all. And the Samara region, so then in the 90s it was a donor region, so then big tax base, and then now this is the region that balances its spendings and incomes. So very few regions like that who practically they break even, but they're not getting much money from the state. That's why the economy is not growing. Then is this a situational, temporary situation, or it's a long-term crisis? I'm afraid it's a long-term crisis. Long-term, because in defense, you cannot close down defense spending because there are lots of programs. So development of new equipment, the military for 3, 4, 5 years, and the suppliers got orders, contracts signed, so money promised. And so many contracts as the Ministry of Finance has not been paying either in 2013, 2014. So then the company already delivered, supplied equipment, they took bank loans. And that is why so then the chances that the defense spending may be reduced, maybe a little bit, but not much. But the flywheel is turning. And so because the defense budget has to be spent, And then certainly because we don't want to bankrupt the companies of military-industrial complex. So then the defense spending is a temporary thing. So we can say, okay, so we by 2020, so the program of rearmament, and then we'll live better. So then all the money just will be channeled to where we need. But with private business, the situation is much worse because no realistic steps aimed at this creation of system of so rule of law, property protection, etc. We don't have it. And so if you look at, if you read, there's this economic article, and 2012. So Mr. Putin wrote this article. So Mr. Putin speaks unequivocally about all the negative things of the judiciary system, the distrust of the judiciary that needs to be changed. But as he wrote it all in the article, so and he was the candidate to the president position. But he talks the talk, but he doesn't walk the walk. And so when the relationship between Ministry of Interior, special agencies, the mentality of to change the mentality of judges, so you won't be able to do that in a matter of several years, even. And so that's a tall order to do that. It's a famous case of Kirov timber. If you remove Mr. Navalny because he was behind us, because the conviction, the verdict, and the indictment, so the content of the indictment was as follows about Mr. Navalny. So he was indicted by virtue of the fact that you're buying certain product, you resell it, and you make money on it, and then for this they put you to prison. They put you in jail, and for this, Mr. Navalny, Petr Officer, just was put in jail because he was buying and then selling. Yes, and he talked about this business with Mr. He's not an owner of this business, not owner company, no business, nothing. Just he talked to this Mr. Officer who owned this business, and even for this, he was prosecuted. So this case is even worse than the second case of Yukos. And so when they were saying that they stole oil, because the sense of indictment that you are doing business, you're involved in business, and this is already a criminal, an act of crime. And so then the post of Russia, so we know that is the same thing. So the people are making money on normal commercial activities, and so the documentation is so legit, all above table, everything is there, so paid through accounts, everything fine. And this is, in the opinion of the Russian court, is a criminal activity. And certainly we say this has to do with Navalny, so because he was prosecuted for his opposition activities. Not true, like the first case of Yukos, when all the regional and local bureaucrats, so because they knew that they could take away someone else's property, because after the first case of Yukos, so they started to steal the same, and so the post of Russia, the same case, and so the local bureaucrats get a chance to grab somebody else's property. So like a timber case with Navalny, so they know, the public officials know that any opposition, any politicians can be put to jail, and his property can be confiscated and distributed evenly between those public officials, and they know that because there is no protection. And so to overcome all this, we need a political will. And then for this economic dead end, plus the lack of investments, plus stagnation, plus a recession in the economy, but the issue can be addressed politically. Neither Minister of Finance nor Economics, so they can't do anything about that to make the economy get out of the crisis, because it's a political decision. Because it's not institutional crisis; it's the political crisis. Why they don't allow to develop agriculture? No, so they allow for agriculture to develop. Look at the statistics. So they invest a lot. Agriculture is evolving. So since 1999, agriculture is I think it's one of the most sustainable part of our economy. So irrespective of the yield of the crop, so this is slowly but surely on the rise. The only part of our economy, so that's about 2003, 2004, we need to admit that after so many many difficulties and challenges. So the system of agriculture eventually managed just to create some sort of semblance of the system of support and investment support and allocation support to the agriculture. So they put it together. So remember that the Soviet Union was the importer of grain. So the Soviet Union imported grain all the way until the last year of its existence. And so now Russia exports grain. So this is agriculture. This is the result of the changes and support.
Can export of grain lead Russia out of the stampede and make it a flourishing country? It cannot, but if you say that agriculture is not developed, it's not true. Grain production is growing, and to the best of my knowledge, and again, you can argue if it is efficient or not efficient, slow or fast. There is the issue of Altai grain harvests, because it's a landlocked area, 4,000 kilometers to any sea. If it is shipped by rail, then it will not be economical. And the government has been discussing that issue for 3 years now, trying to find a solution. They try to build some port facilities to export grains from that port, so that that region could produce more grain and export the surplus. If you look at the poultry and meat production, those are the industries that are showing very stable growth. In certain years, the growth rate reached 30%, which is great for any kind of business. And I wouldn't be surprised if some 2 or 3 years later, Russia could virtually stop importing poultry or other meats. But there are some other problems. Cattle breeding is a problem. Russia cannot do that. It doesn't work. I cannot understand why, but still. You know, if you make pig meat, it's a 6 months cycle. With cattle stock, the cycle is 3 years. So the moment cattle stock is growing, there is a drought like it was in 2010, and government failed to respond with investments in the feedstocks, and that cattle had to be slaughtered. And we have a climatic problem. We have cold climate, and we don't have such climatic conditions for cattle stock as they have in New Zealand. And for Russia, we need to build roofed facilities for cows, and that is the restriction. And besides, we will never grow bananas or grapes or oranges. When you fly to Antalya, to Turkey, you can also see a lot of greenhouses which protect plants from sun. But in our case, should we build greenhouses, we need to see to it that they are heated. So there are still some things that are being addressed, and there are some things in agriculture that cannot be addressed. And if it is beneficial, as it is economical to import beef from Argentina, it will continue. But I have strong doubts that it's a true target, it's a good target when we try to produce everything locally. A working group was set up some time ago under the auspices of the United Nations and the World Bank. And they made a research of the fast growth phenomenon. By and large, fast growth with a rate of 5 to 7% is the effect of the post-World War II times. Never before economists saw such a fast growth. So over 50, 60 years, from 1950 till 2010, there were only 13 countries who were growing at a rate of 7% annually for the period of longer than 25 years. 25 years as the duration of one generation. So those examples are very few, so it's easy not to overlook them. That first conclusion explaining why those countries were growing fast, because and the Russian economy from 1999 through 2008 was also growing at a rate of 7%. Should we manage to maintain that growth, we would be among those 13 countries. And the first conclusion which can be made why those high growth rates can be maintained is only if your economy is export-oriented. No domestic market growth can ensure such high growth rate for the period of one generation. And Russia was lucky that in 1999 through 2008, you remember that depreciation of ruble in 1998 that helped Russian goods become competitive. And domestic demand began growing, but in 2008 that miracle ended, and the domestic demand stopped to grow. In the first quarter of 2014, in order to maintain growing consumption, the population had to cut their savings and deposits in banks. Before that, there was a balance. Now we can see that the growth of per capita income stopped. And in order to maintain your consumption, you need to cut on your savings. So replacement of import goods cannot be done by some order. In the modern open economy, where customs duties role is not that high, and shipping costs in order to ship a couple of shoes made in China to bring them to the United States by sea, it costs just 7 cents. So it's nothing for the cost of that pair of shoes. Those costs are reducing, so it makes it senseless to build small factories that would work for the economy of one country, even for such country as Russia, with a population of 140 million people. And the experience of the automotive industry showed that the company that makes less than 5 million cars a year are not stable. They are either acquired or go bankrupt, except for some marginal cars, luxury cars. So if you run mass production, there is a minimal size. In Russia, the maximum number of cars sold a year is 3 million. So who can build a car company in Russia that would make more than 5 million cars a year? It cannot be done with import replacement. You cannot do so that it's competitive domestically, but is not in demand outside. So you can make everything that is in demand both domestically and abroad, or something is done by directive, by orders. Something is made locally and people are made to buy local goods. So it can be done either by order, or it's up to the people to decide what to buy. And cost-effectiveness principle cannot be abolished. So in terms of replacement of import goods, the government can do something, but it requires investments anyway. And any investment project lasts for about 3 or 4 years, and you cannot order people to invest. And if it is much more beneficial to invest in a relationship with bureaucrats who could ensure that you have some monopoly locally, why should those people invest in building some facilities that are aimed at replacing imports? There is no economic reason for that. That is why the share of non-mineral products is not growing, since those who can invest, they invest in some other areas. Migration is the next question. I wouldn't refer to that as migration only. It takes 10 hours to fly from Moscow to Washington. It's roughly the same as the flying time from Moscow to Vladivostok or to Petropavlovsk upon Kamchatka. And if you move to Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, it's not immigration, but if you move to the United States, immigration. Or if you move to Finland, Kiev or Kharkiv. I made a point about business because the saying goes that fish looks deep waters and people look better places and better times. And if conditions for IT companies are better in Ukraine, if social taxes are lower there, and if lease payments are lower, and the quality of programmers are the same both in Ukraine and in Russia, and all those IT Russian companies that do software, they employ much more people in Ukraine than in Russia, although even 10 years ago it was the opposite. Things have changed by today, and many programmers, Russian highly qualified programmers, they work as freelancers with contracts signed abroad. Who are they and what are they? Are they immigrants or not? It's a very complex notion, you know, specifically when it comes to business. There is a very known example. There is a Boeing aviation company that makes those wonderful planes. In Russia, Boeing maintains some design bureau employing more than 1,000 highly qualified engineers. According to various estimates, the Russian design bureau of Boeing made some from 30 to 50% of all the design work for a Dreamliner Boeing 787. And at the same time, the Russian economy got only jobs and some social taxes, but added value all went to Boeing and incorporated. And but those people who work there, are they immigrants? No. But from the economic point of view, they work for a different economy. So again, when it comes to business and business people, I really believe that business have turned into global and international affair. It's very hard if you work in the contemporary global market. It's hard to stay in the boundaries of a single country, no matter how big the country is. Only if, perhaps it is possible only if you have orders from the state, or if you are investing in exploration and production of oil in some place. Otherwise, in a global competition, you need to be a multinational company. And in high tech, all businesses, nearly all businesses, are international. When it comes to businesses and or things that take place outside business sphere, it's much more difficult to make judgments. When we talk about some researchers, politicians, and experts, analysts, it so happened that in the past 7 to 8 years, I will just make another point. So in Russia, in those years, we saw the situation that resembles very much the Soviet Union situation. If you can imagine that we all follow life cycle, we all want to climb up our careers. And in the Soviet Union, there was used to be a solid pyramid that was controlled fully by the Central Committee of the Communist Party. when the Soviet Union collapsed in Russia, gradually we saw the opportunities for several pyramids. One was civil service, the other was business, third was politics, the other pyramid meant NGOs, military career made up another pyramid. And I think one of the good things Boris Yeltsin made was the fact that he opened various pyramids of career for various people, and you can switch from one pyramid to another. You can have worked in business for some time, then switch to government, and then to the NGOs, and it was just a typical pattern. Since it's the way all advanced countries live by. And in the past 7 to 8 years in Russia, it so happened that all pyramids except for the governmental service became problematic. They have not disappeared. We have the business pyramid, but businessmen are not invited into government. If you work in business and if you are not a friend of the president or prime minister, you cannot become a civil servant. And so we have some bureaucrats who have stayed in the government for 20 years, 30 years or so. I'm not saying that it's too bad, but the fact is that outlooks by a businessman, civil servant, or some other person are different. So if you you've been looking at the world for 20 years from your narrow perspective, you are losing the reality and you take decisions based on some different picture of the world. This year we mark the 25th anniversary of the first convention of People's Deputies. And when Gorbachev came to power in 1985, he became the Secretary General of the CPSU. There were no feelings that changes and reforms were to come, because there were similar faces, secretaries of Gorkoms, Obkoms, regional committees, and even the elections to the Supreme Soviet were not fully free. There were quotas of the Communist Party, and but still, even that burden, like from nowhere, and we saw heaps of public politicians who were determining the Russian policy for the next 10 to 15 years, both in Russia and in many other Soviet republics. And the developments of the past years in Russia show us that public politics in Russia is over. A couple of weeks ago, Boris himself said that we don't have politicians in opposition, because a politician in opposition, that's the person who runs for elections and hopes to win and come to power. Can you think of a single politician in Russia who hopes that he would run and win from the party in power? I don't think there is any, and for the opposition politicians there is no room. We have dissidents, and Nemtsov called himself a dissident because he said, I had a different opinion on things that were going on, but I don't have no chances to win election, to run for election. I cannot even run for elections because I will not be registered. No media will cover my speeches, and I cannot be sponsored by any businessman. And Navalny's election campaign financing was put under scrutiny, and virtually the financial support was cut from him. And the authorities always find ways to stop such politicians from coming to power. To say that things are much better abroad, well, I say that you can live everywhere. You can live in Moscow, you can live in Tambov, in Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, in Washington, or even in Africa, and you can live well everywhere. For a contemporary individual, freedom mostly means the freedom of choice, and those under the same circumstances can make that choice. And they try to see where they can really develop themselves and live better. If you don't find such an opportunity in Russia, or if you or your family are threatened living in Russia, but you can afford living in Paris or Helsinki and be employed in the same capacity where you are professionals, then what can stop you? Why should put your family's prosperity at risk just because you have some other opinion that is different from the official one? So I don't think that you can stop immigration. So people live even in the United States, and more people come to the United States. There is inflows and outflows of people in the United Kingdom. So to use the word immigration, or just to have fair immigration, you need to have fair competition in the country everywhere, in all areas, in politics and sports. So when fair competition is in this country, then probably we will forget about immigration as a problem. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, in the back rows. No response again, so let's start with you. One. No, I cannot afford to Armenians ask two questions. I would like to apologize for I'm Aran Kazaryan. I'm graduate of the Yerevan School for Political Studies. Three very brief questions. Again, in the backdrop of the recent events in Ukraine and the sanctions imposed on Russia, can they really affect Russian businessmen, those who had deposits in foreign banks, so that those businessmen would bring the money into the Russian banks? That's my first question. Second question. What first priority tasks do you think are there? Or just in other words, what steps are to be taken to improve investment climate in Russia? And the third question is about my company. In the past 10 years, it proved to be quite efficient and big in the Armenian market as the biggest manufacturer of confectionery goods. And it makes plans to expand its exports into Russia with a new brand. Mind you, we are short of time. Okay. I wonder if there are any operating institutions in Russia that would support foreign businesses and create a favorable climate for investments. Thank you. I'm Katarzyna Jeńska. I'm from Poland. My question was also about sanctions. My colleague from Armenia have already asked that, but I will articulate that, rephrase that. What's your opinion of the sanctions? Are they meaningful? I'm not talking about that formal sanctions, but something that is done not openly, no loans for Russian firms and lower trust and confidence in Russian markets. And second question, you made that point about the termination of real per capita income growth. Mr. Yas and Mr. Kudrin spoke before us earlier, and they also made a point about that issues. And they also said that real per capita income in the future can go down. So, under what conditions do you think lower per capita income can arouse some unrest in Russia? Thank you. Good afternoon, Maria Golova from St. Petersburg. President Putin made a visit to China recently. Do you think, in that backdrop, could you comment on some issue that arouses some concern with the Russians, and that is the involvement of the Chinese in the development of the Far East and Siberia? Andrei Berezhnoy from Mineralny Vody. My question is quite close to the previous questions. As a manager, I would say that crisis is a very painful time, but that's good opportunity to start looking for right solutions and ensure growth later on. So following the imposition of all those sanctions, Russia felt some pains, and officials started voicing some ideas of its own payment system and using the ruble as the settlement currencies. I wonder if there will be power will enough to take unpopular decisions that would run counter to some popular promises. I'm Alexei Korovin, Federation of Drivers. You mentioned my region a couple of times, Tambov, and I understood that I had to ask a question. Looking into, and I hope, positive future, we all hope that sooner or later that alleged notorious investment climate will be better. And which industry or which industries do you think can become the driver of growth in the near term in Russia? In Russia. I'm Denis Grekov from the Altai region. I'm not an expert in that area, but if you read the reports of some analysts, there is another issue which have not been covered yet, and that is the problem of too much leverage in the population. In Altai, for instance, the leverage of a single person is 3 to 4 loans, and in the conditions when real per capita income growth stops, it's quite problematic to pay so many loans. Given that, we can foresee some rise of social problems, social tensions, since many people can really become bankrupts. So could you comment on that too, please? Thank you. I'm Ivan Vlasov from Kaliningrad. From time to time, I read reports of stock exchange analysts, and one of them said that the biggest virtue for Russian banking system is the radical decrease in world oil prices. Well, do you agree with that, and do you think it is feasible or relevant? Thank you. Well, okay, I'll start with sanctions. I believe that the imposed sanctions, well, really it's ridiculous to refer to them as sanctions against Russia because they impact a very limited number of individuals and very few companies. I think 61 individuals fall under the sanctions. In Belarus, for instance, it's 230 individuals and more than 60 companies. And in Belarus, given the scale of Belarus and scale of Russia, 60 companies could mean something what Gazprom means for Russia. I don't think that sanctions will affect Russia directly. Those individuals under sanctions never had any deposits or other assets abroad. And the companies on the list, on the blacklist, except for a couple of banks and Chernomorneftegas oil company, are very much unknown, and they are of very low profile companies. So you can understand that sanctions is something that it's a two-way traffic, and even in Europe, but in the United States too, some businesses strongly oppose those sanctions since Russian market may become lucrative to them and they can make money here.
The events in Ukraine and in Crimea have been so unexpected that no in any degree unified opinion or consolidated position exists. I know that in the international law, and people like to appeal to the international law, there is no such law. You know, it is indeed about the relations which are recognized as norm. They're not codified. If nobody is objects, then it seems to be a norm. This is what the international law has always been about. Apart from a few international treaties. So of 28 member states of the EU, only 6 countries demanded for a statement on the annexation of Crimea to be adopted on a political level. Others did not voice a pronounced opinion. So such a situation in both in Europe and elsewhere undermines the system of international security as it was shaped after World War II and poses problems for the entire international community, that while China supported Russia, but at the same time the tension in the South Chinese Sea became more acute, and indeed the future of Taiwan is very uncertain, and it may very well be that Taiwan would join the continental China when the polite yellow men turn up there. So for the global international relations, these are very anxious times, and it appears that nobody understands what can be done with a country which has nuclear weapons. When I was in Washington, D.C., and I was meeting several members of the White House administration, the first question was, what are we to do? And I said, what do you want? And they said, stop Putin. And I said, well, you can enter you may enter the Ukraine. There is the Budapest Memorandum, and so place your troops in Ukraine. according to a memorandum of 1994, you have all the grounds. No, we're not ready to do that. Then I said, well, then have another objective, because if you have a task to stop Mr. Putin, then you have to enter Ukraine with a military force. Otherwise, don't talk about this. So, what is the objective of the sanctions? What is the objective or the target of the sanctions? Because indeed, sanctions could have been adopted that would have very strongly undermined or even led to troublesome times in Russia, such as, for instance, a ban for the banks and the credit institutions, and the Russian banks, the ban on the Russian banks to have corresponding accounts in dollars and euros. Russia is a country which imports everything that one can think of, starting from the foodstuffs all the way to the pieces and parts of the nuclear armaments. And if the Russian companies had not been able to pay for the import through the Russian banks, that would have severely damaged the Russian economy. However, no serious international actor is ready for such sanctions. So, as far as the informal sanctions are concerned, the sanctions will just vanish by themselves. Indeed, for some time there will be the market of loans was closed to the Russian banks. 3 months have passed, or even 2 months have passed, that Alpha Bank was able to secure a loan already. So we'll see what happens next. There were no. It appears that no further. And business is quite cynical. If you can make a dollar, and if it is not banned, then people would do it. And if you can get a higher interest on the loans credited to Russian banks and the Russian financial institutions, then of course people would do that. Banks would do that, and these informal sanctions, whatever they are, will dissipate. It is difficult to say how long will it take for them to dissipate. But one could remember that even after the crisis of 1998, in 3 years, by 2001 and 2002, the Russian banks and companies started to enter the market again and be getting their loans. So these losses, these damages have been put off, so the credits can restart. So I do not think that we may expect any serious effect. There is one other type of informal sanctions that one could name, which is the growth of political risk. The growth of political risk. All businessmen, when they take decisions about the investment in a foreign country, the political risks are among the criteria. How stable is the political situation? Is it possible should one expect political risks? And for many years, Russia was a country with low political risk because everybody understood that this was a more or less stable country. So the evaluation of political risks is now quite different. The political risks are much higher connected with Russia, and those businessmen who were contemplating new investments, the situation has changed. So none of the businessmen who are already here are willing to leave, it is true, but of those businessmen who were considering or contemplating investment into Russia, only 10% of these, according to some studies, are ready to proceed. So others either took a pause or said that they would invest elsewhere. So we do not see any statistical effect within a quarter, 3 months, or even a year. But in terms of the investment activities, of course, we shall see. We shall not see anything good happen in this regard. the task, the judiciary, independent judiciary, political competition, equality before the law. These are the three basic elements. And that the school is not a foreign agent. No, this is a minor thing. Political competition by itself would entail abolishing this law, and the independent judiciary would not make it possible to apply this law because the definition of the political activity would be different. If are there organizations which support foreign investment? No, there is the Consultative Council under the government of the Russian Federation. There are also some bodies under the governors in the Russian regions, but these mainly work with the Russian regions, but there is no system of support of the investment for Russia. Can the decrease in income and excessive loans lead to social unrest? My answer is no, and I have not seen any indicators of the social discontent because of the decreasing incomes. And if we do not, if we disregard the so-called monetization of privileges, which was the pensioners' law, but other than that, I do not see the Russian population to start to the streets because their economic situation is worsening. So I do not believe that this is going to happen. So I do not think that the Russians will start to the streets only because their economic situation has worsened. I can't say that this is, I can't guarantee that, but we have not seen it before. Because for this to become a political event, it is insufficient for one city, say not Tambov, but some other place, 20 people going to the streets. This has to be a nationwide mass movement. I think that Russia, and this is a topic I would like to make, the developed countries and in Europe, the demographic situation in Russia is very, very unfavorable. But in the next 15 years, we shall be seeing the reduction and the dwindling of the people in active age and an increase of pensioners, which means that the actual supply of labor will decrease, and the employers will be looking for qualified labor. Under such a situation, I do not see a catastrophic decrease in the incomes. So what we will see more is more of a quantum-style process when the budget will either increase the salaries, because when you don't have enough labor, then of course the business raises the wages and the salaries. Otherwise, you lose the most qualified workers. And by increasing this, you immediately come up and encounter the complaints of the next year. So I do not foresee any catastrophic decrease in the quality of life or the level of how people live. So if we believe in the mean prognosis, the forecasts of the Russian Statistical Committee, then by 2030 the active population of Russia will go down to 67% of the entire population, which will be decreased by further 17%. And all things being evil, all things being equal, this is a very disheartening circumstance because even if the Russian economy grows by say 50% over the next several decades, then this is a catastrophic challenge because and it is not quite clear as to how we can cope with this challenge, because this problem cannot be resolved for say the attraction of the immigrant labor, because say the migrants coming from Central Asia, they're between 8 to 10 million people. 10 to 15% of all labor are the immigrants. If we indeed deport all these people, then the Russian economy will literally collapse, and these people will not be able to replace the qualified labor. So from the standpoint of macroeconomics, their productivity will be lower. And it is not quite clear if the Central Asia does have so much labor force. Well, we're not talking about China. Is a different story. The Chinese don't speak Russian. You see, they're fine, but they don't speak Russian, and that's a problem. So the over saturation with the loans is also a problem, but I have not seen a single case for this to have become a mass problem. I think that this will be more remain a problem of the banks than the problem of population and the problem of the people themselves. A decrease in the oil prices, is this a problem for the Russian economy? I do not think the oil prices will go down. I do not readily believe that I'm not talking with fluctuations between say 70 and 110 for say 3 days. That can happen, but oil is a very specific locomotive of economy in the literal sense of the word. 50% of all oil produced in the world is spent for the petrol for cars. So the world population is growing, the number of motor cars increases, the countries let's just think about China, and then India is queuing, and then others are also in that line. Let's take other Asiatic tigers and African continent growing by 6% a year. Then, if you add up these things, that you will see that the demand for petrol will not go down, and there is no single working technology in the world that would have allowed to replace or substitute petrol/diesel with anything else. So all liquid hydrogens, all the electrical motors are now about experiments, and none of these technologies can be used on the industrial scale. Besides, there is the problem of the car park, and it will take at least 20 years to replace the car park with something else, with some other vehicles operating on different principles. So I think the only country which is growing by going down in energy consumption is the United States. Europe, in spite of the fact that economy is not growing, the energy consumption is not going down, and all other countries except for the United States grow in energy consumption. So I don't think that we should be planning for any further threshold than 15 years. So why should the oil prices go down? The main factor for the 2008 the oil prices went down for 2009 was indeed the stalling of the international banking system, because the banking loans are indeed the locomotive, because the major American banks stopped crediting each other and crediting the clients, and so the resources in the prices for the mineral resources went down. However, the mineral prices went back again when the banks recovered. For the Russian budget, $90 per barrel is not a disaster. Russia can well survive these prices because, indeed, the central bank has already passed the floating exchange rate of the ruble, and it may change with the devaluation of rubles. So, in terms of the actual ruble revenues, will not be contingent on the oil price. So, I don't think that. If the oil price is going down to say $60 per barrel, and being oil price and it's staying there for say 5 years, this is not something that I can believe in, taking into account what we see, that which is dictated by what we see in the Gulf countries and the balancing of their budget. Say in Saudi Arabia, it has been balanced to say $98 per barrel, and Saudi Arabia is today the only country which can afford sharply decreasing or increasing the production. And once the oil prices go down, Saudi Arabia will immediately decrease the production. And the Saudis had problems in the 90s with that, and they do not want to see this repeated. So they will certainly decrease the production for anything to be changed in the Russian economy, for that matter. And let me repeat that for anything to be changed, political decisions need to be taken. It is not sufficient for the oil prices to go down to change something. A political will is required. Will the political will be sufficient? I do not know what the author has meant. I think that the independence of judiciary today is an unpopular decision, because the independence of the judiciary immediately leads to fair elections. Fair elections is a threat to power. So I think that the one thing that the government today doesn't want is to lose power. So the political will, I think they're not suicide mongers. They're not suicidal. They are not willing to be dislodged. What sectors in the Russian economy could have become the factors of growth? I do not know. I think that the potential of growth for such a large economy as Russian, in the geographical terms, in the demographic terms, in the potential terms, in the terms of the mineral resources, is not. It is a very sophisticated, very complex economy compared, say, to Singapore, where there is the port business and the seafaring business, and there is the financial center, which are the only factors for growth. It is more important for Russia, I think, to create the conditions for the investment attractiveness of business, and then we shall see who will be able to grow, because it is impossible to predict. 10 years ago, 8 years ago, if I were asked about the perspectives of AvtoVAZ, I would have said that AvtoVAZ has to die as the other motor car producers did of the Soviet era. But after the crisis of 2008, AvtoVAZ must have died. But according to the results of 2008, every produced car of AvtoVAZ had $2,000 of loss. This is how the company was working. $2,000 of loss per each produced car. These losses were refinanced by the Russian banks. And I can't say that everything was bad in the company, because the company was run by Rostechnology, and I'm not sure who really got this money. Yeah. In summer of 2009, the political leadership of the country had a question as to what needs to be done to AvtoVAZ. And indeed, $2,000 of losses per each car is indeed a disaster, and it was considered to close down, shut down the plant. And I have to give the due to President Putin that he took, and everybody wanted to close down Avtovaz, and Mr. Putin was the only person who said that Avtovaz needs to be saved. 10 billion rubles were got by Avtovaz, and 60 billion rubles were paid as loan repayment to the banks. So a new manager came, a new general director, and Renault, an interested investor, bought blocking a package. And by summer of 2010, it turned out that Avtovaz, it didn't quite recover, but by the summer of 2010, the plan for doubling the production facilities was adopted. So the repayment of loans, the investor, and the alliance with Renault led to a situation whereby a comeback became possible. 5 minutes. All right. I still have to talk about China. So what happened is that Avtovaz was feeling quite good because they sharply increased the quality, and the cars became a lot better. Why am I saying this? Because around 2012, Renault, as the chief of the alliance, decided to start projecting a new car for the developing markets, and the new platform was to be developed, which is usually done once every 10 years by the major car producers. So they came to Tolyatti and said that here is a new platform. The engineers and constructors said, "That's a bad platform. We have a better one." So they had been working, indeed, creating a new platform, and the French said that can't be true, and they decided to make a compromise, commission 2 engineers from France, 2 engineers from Tolyatti, and 3 designs, 100% Russian, 100% French, and 50-50. And the eventual result is 85% Russian and 15% French. So the engineering thought in Tolyatti allowed to create a platform which would be good for the developing markets in terms of energy consumption, fuel consumption, and a whole number of other. So who could have believed? But the conditions are very important. China. 4 minutes. Who is benefiting? It is quite clear what is China getting. China will be getting the guaranteed supply of raw materials. China is at the stage of very swift industrial development for the next 10 to 15 years. The demand for all types of energy, all types of raw materials in China will only grow, which is the reason why China is so active in Africa, why it is so active in Latin and South America, why it is so active in buying mineral from Australia, and of course having the ability to avail of the benefits of the Eastern Siberian mineral deposits. would have been improper if China had not thought about this. So it is quite clear what is China getting. China is getting secured mineral supply for the next 15 to 25 years. China gets the ability to invest its money, its resources into some investment projects, and to get a certain interest. It is not quite clear if the Chinese labor market would in any way profit, because such productions and technologies do not need much labor. It is not quite clear what does Russia get, because usually such raw materials and minerals are located in the places of Russia, in the regions of Russia which are totally uninhabited, and even this gas pipeline crosses the territory where there are no gas consumers. They're empty lands. Vladivostok and Khabarovsk will be getting their gas from Sakhalin and not from East Siberia. So the gas pipeline would be running across these empty lands. There is no gas consumption. So the capacity of this gas pipeline is much higher. So the might of Siberia is just it just goes across the huge expanse, uninhabited expanse. So with respect to the tax revenues, it is not quite clear either, because we know that there would be no. It is not quite clear if there is going to be tax revenues large enough in terms of the economic growth. If the investments go up, then 0.15% will be seen for the next several years, and then 0.3% will be seen for 38 billion cubic meters of gas. So we certainly do not see much macroeconomic result from these, because even for such as a major project, 25 years for $4 billion, it does not seem to be particularly beneficial, because of this is pretty much uninhabited space. And my last phrase here, I do not know if we should be glad or if we should be sad. I have no claims to the Chinese. They're doing what they think is beneficial. I do not quite see this benefit for Russia, and I'm trying to compare what China does in Africa. In Africa, China is investing tens of billions of dollars, having agreed and signed agreements with many countries, 16 countries. But with that, China is building roads, China is building hospitals, China is building infrastructure. In Russia, China, within this project, is not going to build infrastructure, hospitals, or roads. Are we better than Africa or worse than Africa? I don't know. Please raise your hands who think that we're better than Africa. Who think that we're worse than Africa? So it's not clear, it's not evident. But from the standpoint of the Africans, I can at least see what use do they get. I do not quite see what do we see as benefit. the role of transnational corporations and their influence on Russian economy. In today's world, the transnational corporations play a critical role, huge role, because they have the financial resources, they have the financial scale, and they operate on the financial scale which exceeds the budget of some little countries. And I think that in this sense, they are the conductors of the economic decisions or the economic solutions. They are conducting and they move labor, they move production, they create jobs, they increase the level of life and the quality of life in other countries. They are increasing the quality and the standards of quality. In many cases, they play an important role in the decrease of prices. There is a statistical phenomenon. If Walmart comes to a country, then the retail prices go down. Walmart is not allowed into Russia, so the prices don't go down. I think that the transnational corporations play a huge role, not only in Russia, but elsewhere. In Russia, they are in many ways limited in their action. We have several global corporations which are and have been quite successful in Russia, like McDonald's, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, tobacco companies, and they make huge money in this country and do not want to leave. There are transnational companies like Boeing, which feels very, very comfortable in Russia, which has longer-term relations with the titanium production in the Upper South Side. There are several transnational oil and gas companies which have gotten access to some Russian fields and mines. The oil fields and gas fields, but I can't say that this plays any significant role because the government tends to contain. They are viewed as generally enemies and that they need to be controlled very, very strongly, as all NGOs. And to them, they always have a freedom of choice. With respect to chewing gums and the diapers, they will still be selling these in Russia because we don't have production. But with respect to making their production base either in Belarus, Poland or Russia, they don't much care. So they always have a choice. Russia also have a choice, either to let them invest or not to let them to invest here. Thank you. Let me probably express the general opinion, and there are some things, the best things that we have, and that we do not, that we're richer than many, and we're here. People are the best what we have. Indeed, people is indeed the greatest treasure that we have, and it is true. But of course, the country must be interested in its people. Unfortunately, I have to finish this session because we're having the ambassador of Poland coming, but we are coming here in exactly 50 minutes at 2:30. Thank you.
Пойдемте, уйди на секунду. На секунду. Тебя пацана окружат, тебе не дадут уйти. Пойдем.
Я сейчас здесь буду стоять.
А?
Я лучше здесь. Что там сяду за стол? Я лучше здесь отвечу на вопрос, куда зашел. Потом захочу.
Так, кто хочет отвечать на вопросы, вы можете Сергея Владимировича пригласить туда, он не хочет идти, или ответить на вопросы здесь.
У меня вопрос, Сергей Владимирович. Я директор Телевизора. Было замечательно, очень